Welcome everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today on a webinar. We're going to be going through a little bit of information today about a grant opportunity for traditional owners that's been released. It got released on the 6th of October. I've got a PowerPoint slide that will go through it. So this is a webinar. It's quite one way I'll be talking. The interactive part that we've got in this is a little different from how Zoom meetings run. So I think it just might pay for us to have a little bit of a practice. But if people can have a look down at the bottom of their screens, you can see you've got a participants button with a little people sign. Then you've got a Q&A section. And that's where we're going to actually collect your questions or comments or those sorts of things throughout the webinar today. So if you want to just have a general chat, you know, jump in there. But if there are particular questions about the guidelines, about the application form, if you can jump in that Q&A section. What we've got is we've got Eliza working in the same office as myself, and she's going to be collating those. So if there's lots of questions that are the same, she's going to roll them up for me so that I can keep delivering the guidelines, keep basically working through the talk. And then we've got a large Q&A section, and we've got lots of time planned for at the end. But if there's any questions along the way that she can walk into me, she will, and we'll see how we go from there. And yep, hello to everybody who's been saying hello. Thank you. Can everyone just to have a little practice run, just while we're waiting a little bit longer? I can't see anybody, Lisa. The only people that I can see are the panelists, and so I will introduce those people in a minute. I can't hear anybody and I can't see anybody, so it's literally just going to be our faces on a small strip on the side, and then we've got the PowerPoint. So if you need to have a cup of tea and you know, walk away and everything while we're talking, it's fine. I will have no idea. Can anyone just can everybody just for a few moments just jump in and just write a hi in the Q&A section just to make sure that it's working? Oh, I've got someone in the Q&A. So I've got lots of people in the chat. Oh, here we go. We've got the thank you. That's fantastic. It's really great that this is the section that I'm going to be running the questions from. So thank you very much for that. Alrighty. All right, let's get started. I think we've got a fairly good plan, a fairly solid plan here. I can just share the screen. And then I need to go like this. Alrighty. So the Great Barrier Foundation currently has 2 grant opportunities open at the moment. The one that we are talking about today is the Healthy Water Grant opportunity. So the other one, we've got another webinar running tomorrow, and you're welcome to jump on and have a listen and go through the guidelines and application form if you're interested in those as well, or you might get enough information out of this one today. For anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Karen Gerhardt, and I'm the Senior Project Manager in the Traditional Owner Partnerships Project team. Sorry, I'm joined today with Kathy Chasson-Radway. She is also in the Traditional Owner Partnership team, and Eliza is also a member of our team. Kathy is one of our grants managers, so as we go through the grants process and you need questions answered or a contact person, Kathy might be your girl. Just before I move into the actual webinar proper, I'd like to do acknowledgement of country. I'd like to acknowledge the country that I'm on today, the Wulgurukaba country. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners, the past, present and emerging. I'd also like to acknowledge that today is a very sorry day for the Wulgurukaba people, and they're in sorry business right now. And I'd like to pass on my condolences for the passing of Gigara George. I just wanted to say that she was a remarkable woman and an amazing advocate for traditional owners, and she was incredibly passionate and driven, and I was privileged to be able to work with her for a very long time. And if we could just take a minute's silence, I'd be very appreciative. I'll manage that moment. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate that. So in our webinar today, I'm going to be giving a little bit of context setting about the Reef Trust partnerships and the water quality grants, these healthy water grants, where they've come from, the investment, you know, how they were developed and designed. I'll be going through quite quickly an overview of the grant guidelines. I'll be talking about the application process. And then, as I said, there's a question and answer function that everybody can use, and I'll certainly try to answer all the questions that come my way. If I can't answer your questions, it doesn't mean that I'm ignoring you. I'm just going to, I may need to take some questions on notice. But what we have is a section on our website near the grant application form and the grant guideline form, frequently asked questions, and I'm required as part of the process. So everything that we address today and talk about in terms of questions and answers, if it's new information or if it sits outside the guidelines, I'll put the question up on the website with the answer so that everybody is able to access the same information and have the same opportunity. There's an equity piece in everything that we do around the process that's running at the moment. So today is just a little bit, hopefully just some sort of like a clarifying chat that we can have and just see if these grants, the healthy water grants, are the grants that people want to put in for. We'll explain a little bit about the Reef Trust partnership first of all. It's an agreement between the Australian Government and the Great Barrier Foundation, and it's a $443 million grant over 6 years. So we have 4 years left of that six year contract, and it's made up of 5 major components. So there's a water quality improvement component, crown of thorns or the COTS removal, COTS control component. There's reef restoration and adaptation science, you might have heard of it called as RAS. There's a traditional owner community reef protection activities, so that's the traditional owner component and the communities component in that section. And then there's an integrated monitoring and reporting activities, often called or referred to as IMR. Those are the different sections that the GBRF has been contracted to work against. Now, in the traditional owner space, there was a negotiation of a 10% across the other areas, and that's the other areas being the water quality, the crown of thorns, starfish control, the reef restoration, adaptation, and the integrated monitoring. And so not only does the traditional owner component run its section, but it's actually working and being a cross-cutting enabler in those other areas as well. And that's what leads us into these healthy water grants that we're talking about today. We're working with traditional owners to be part of that larger healthy water or water quality section. So I just want you to see, you've got the traditional owner component sits across the top, and down you can see the grants have sort of like a component within that. But it's all about, so we've got the traditional owner component coming together with water quality. So at its highest level, you know, in the Reef Trust partnership, the objectives and outcomes are what I've just got on here on this slide. The principal objective is to achieve significant and measurable improvements in the health of the Great Barrier Reef during the term of the partnership. that's what we're all working towards, and we're trying to do it together. The outcomes that we're hoping to see, I've just got a couple up here: the improved management of the Great Barrier Reef and relevant activities in the adjacent catchments, the protection of attributes that contribute to the outstanding universal values of the Great Barrier Reef, including species, habitats and Indigenous values, and management of key threats to the Great Barrier Reef, including poor water quality and things like crown of thorn starfish outbreaks. In the traditional owner reef protection component, we have a very specific focus, and that very specific purpose, and that purpose is to improve the engagement of traditional owners in the protection of the Great Barrier Reef World Heritage Area. So we're bringing the component of water quality into improve the engagement of traditional owners. So when we have a look at the water quality component annual work plan, you can see that there are quite a number of things that water quality is working on this year. So there's regionally focused on grant actions, early investments, there's the traditional owner-led water quality improvements, which is why we're here today talking about this grant opportunity, the innovations and systems change, and we've got conservation and protection. So all of those features are important to deliver on. And the way that the traditional owner partnership team decided to address this working together across the different components, working across water quality and COTS and those sorts of things, is actually take a co-design approach. Now, the co-design relationship that sits within the foundation at the moment is between members of the traditional owner water quality technical working group together with the GBRF, the foundation. So that's where the partnership is. And the reason that we took the co-design approach is that we were always looking for the collective experience. It was the lived experience in understanding country and how traditional owners look after water sources. And I think it became very obvious very early on in our discussions that there were challenges faced by traditional owners around accessibility into the grants space, and we've done a lot of work together with the technical working group and myself working on as part of one of the designers in that area to address a lot of what we saw as challenges or barriers. The technical working group was also fundamental in drawing together the key focus areas for the traditional owner water quality grants. And these design features are all basically brought together to support the projects and activities that deliver on what is important to traditional owners in looking after and keeping the water and culture healthy. I just wanted to take a moment to introduce the Water Quality Traditional Owner Technical Working Group. We have a chair of our working group, and that's Dr. Cass Hunter, and I saw just before that she's online. I think Dennis is going to be joining us today as well, and hopefully Samala's on. They indicated that they'd have time this afternoon, so a big shout out to this group who has been working tirelessly since April. We've been working on the annual work plan, and we've been co-designing basically what is a full program where the grants are just one part of what is the deliverable under the water quality space. So let's jump into the guidelines. So folks, what I'm doing, I've got a copy of the guidelines in front of me. If you've got a copy too, I mean, you're welcome to follow. I'm not going to do it page by page. I'm just going to try and hit the important speaking points so that people, you know, if they hear things or if it's not clear, if you don't have further information in the guidelines and you think you need some further information, you can throw it into the Q&A space and feel free. So the Traditional Owner Healthy Water Grants Program is a competitive grants program. It has $4.5 million to eligible traditional owners to build capabilities, increase skills and training opportunities, strengthen partnerships and undertake healthy water projects within the Great Barrier Reef catchment that will help protect the Great Barrier Reef. So it's about traditional owners and it's about water quality coming together. So we're looking for work that is about looking after or being one with water, you know, looking after water sources, but it's also an opportunity for traditional owners to be getting different skill sets or improve capacity or capabilities. And that's an important feature that, that we're trying to sort of communicate today. So one of the standout design features of the Healthy Water grants is the different entry levels that traditional owner groups can use to access the funding. There are 2 grant categories and they cover 3 funding levels. Now the thinking behind, or the design piece around these different access points, is to give traditional owner groups with all different levels of readiness or governance or experience the opportunity to actually be working in the healthy water space. So there's 2 main areas. There's foundational healthy water grants, which are about either setting up or doing on-ground activities. And if you can see on this slide, you've got funding level 1, which is up to $25,000, and these are getting ready grants. And these are grants that will help you get started as a traditional owner group. If you need to develop a project, if you need to do some thinking, if you need to run meetings, and we'll go through the activities in the next couple of slides. This is the area where you can start and you can actually access funds to get yourself ready for what will be a bigger project into the future. If you're ready to go and you've got project ideas, you've got projects developed and you're thinking, and you've got your group organised, then there are project ready grants under the foundational grant levels. That's from $25K to $150,000. They can run across 2 years, and then there is a larger opportunities for groups who have basically been working in this space for quite a while, and they are more than project ready. They're actually partnership ready. They could potentially have a lot of skills, or they could be working with a number of groups or partners in this space, and that's a funding level that's up to $500,000. That project can go up until May 2024. It doesn't have to. It's just the timeline that we have for the whole of the RTP. I've got dates throughout the rest of the talk, but I'll just put them up here. They're in the funding guidelines, and they're on the website. They're really important to remember. The grants application opened on the 6th of October. They'll be open for 6 weeks. So that's another design feature. We've got them open for a long time so that people have the opportunity to get assistance in writing, the grant application if they need, to have meetings, to come together to discuss the projects, all those sorts of things. 6 weeks is quite a good amount of time. That has the applications closing on the 17th of November, right up until 11:45 at midnight. So it's the next day that I will have an interesting time opening that inbox. There's an assessment process. There'll be a panel. It is a competitive grants process. We're hoping to be through that process and then have made recommendations to the foundation board and let people know successful and unsuccessful by the 11th of December. Then, because we know it's wet season, we know it's Christmas, people are closing down, we're actually not going to do a lot of work over that Christmas period. We're just going to put a pause on the process, and when we come back in January, we'll do the contract negotiation with the successful applicants, and that will happen across mid-January, early February. And so what you need to look for in your planning and thinking of if you want to put a grant application into this process is that these are next year projects, and probably the soonest you can start will be February 2021 onwards. There'll be no capacity in I think anyone's world to actually have contracts and to be off the board in January at all. That will come down to a lot of just having people back from Christmas, I think. So this grant opportunity, what the objectives are, and this is an important thing to just keep in your mind as people are writing and thinking about whether this fit of the grants is the right fit for the projects that you have. You can either develop a project to fit it, or if you've got projects in existence, make sure they match into what these objectives are. This is part of what the assessment panel will be looking at. The objectives are to support traditional owners in planning, recording how they wish to care for their water sources or are caring for their water sources. It's money that can provide support for activities that lead to improved leadership and competency building. So we're talking about building capabilities, skills, knowledge, relevant expertise in the water quality area. Fund projects that support on-ground management to improve the health of water and water sources, or it can maintain healthy water. and fund activities that result in the identification, conservation, management, promotion of heritage values associated with water and water sources. We're really looking at the cultural flows, the cultural significance of water in this space. Thank you. Yes, so just very quickly, I just have a question passed to me, which is really good, so we can just pop into it. Just wanting to confirm that we can enter as level 2 if we already have formed ideas. Yes, you can, absolutely. So the Keystone, if we go back to the very large grant opportunity, the $500,000 opportunity as Keystone grants, that could be a collection of all of some of the activity ideas that I've listed in 2. It doesn't need to be different. It's just the difference will be the scale up and the complexity, and that you might be having multiple partnerships in that space that makes them the Keystone grants, and so that they're bigger. If you wanted to just do 1 or 2 small projects down, you can enter in those foundational grants, but there's nothing about the activity type that doesn't mean you can't pull them up into the bigger plan of what will be a Keystone grant. So here's a description of the grant levels, of the funding levels, and the type of description that I just want people to think of. This is in your grant guidelines. It's in a table. So you can have a look at this. And this is not exhaustive. I've put together, the team has put together ideas through discussions, but this is really up to traditional owners to think about where your priorities for looking after and managing water lay. So in this Getting Ready grants, this is these small kind of supporting grants that are there for traditional owners that need an uplift into the space, that they can actually be project ready. Accessing professional grant writers or consultants to help your group plan and write up a future project idea. This is the one of 2 potential grant rounds in water quality for traditional owners. So this is the first of the Healthy Water grants. There are plans to have one, in another 18 months' time. So if groups don't have an idea now, maybe they can access some time and some thinking and some small funds to get them ready for a larger project later on. You can do planning workshops to discuss and develop future projects for looking after water and water sources. So that's bringing your mob together, meeting on country. You could get a facilitator, you could hire somebody to write up for you those ideas and pull them into a very succinct, a very easy to read project plan that would be very complementary to a grant application in the future. Maybe you need to work through your governance arrangements for the group and have ideas about setting up a steering committee, or how would you build capacity in your group to actually manage a fully functioning project. There's money there for cultural mapping or camps or knowledge exchanges to collect important information. Like I said before, activities that involve training or building capacity so that people have skills to actually maybe run or lead projects into the future. Water quality monitoring skills, those sorts of things. Learning opportunities. If traditional owners are out there and aren't sure of what the water quality opportunities are that they'd like to actually implement for their own country, then maybe you could access money under this grant, under this funding level here, to do peer-to-peer exchanges as it relates to what your future vision might be on your country. Look, the cultural mapping stuff, on country visits, can support elders to go and be present and share their information or share their aspirations to collect important information. And then also just producing the relevant communication materials about healthy water and why it's important to your traditional owner group. It's an important missing feature that we don't recognise enough, the cultural values that people have along the GBR, and why it's important to traditional owners when we make lots of the management decisions. So elevating that information is a good space here. But just as easily, those can transfer over here as well. If you've got you need some of that, and you've got bigger ideas for a project. So the foundational project ready grants, the level 2. Look, I'm not going to go through them all, but there's lots of ideas there. These are just examples that we could think of and come up with, but these are very much, I think, more the on-ground activities that actually work towards building on existing country-based plans and implement any of those ideas you have around water, understanding the impacts that are actually, creating issues for your water quality on your country, potentially. Again, more training programs, key educational pieces that are focused on water and could help develop future projects. And then, probably the more obvious water quality work that people talk about: wetland rehabilitation, gully restoration, revegetation along waterways, water quality monitoring. All of these things are completely relevant and completely applicable, but there could be more. Not to undervalue any of the cultural priorities for the understanding cultural flows, promoting or communicating the cultural values that sit around water for the GBR. And then we come to the level 3. These are the keystone grants. These are complex partnership ready grants. So one of the things about this grant level is we just want to recognise that there are traditional owner groups out there who have been working in the water quality space for a long time. They're organised, they have been building partnerships perhaps with NRM groups or with business partners or with other traditional owner groups. They could be working on catchment plans, they could be working on large monitoring or training programs around water quality. And we wanted to make an opportunity available for those groups who have potentially developed project plans or business plans and are really operating at or are ready to operate at a very much more complex scale. This opportunity is here for you. There needs to be, obviously, as we go up the funding levels, we would expect a lot more supporting documentation and a lot of thought. And if you're in a partnership sort of a way where you've already got established partnerships, letters of support from your partners, those sorts of things, just explaining to the assessment panel what's in place and how this grant will actually help you. There's a section in the grant guidelines, it will talk about who is eligible to apply. These are traditional owner healthy water grants, which are targeted towards traditional owner groups. Can be established, could be emerging, which is why we've got the different funding access levels. Groups located along the Great Barrier Reef coastline and within the World Heritage Area and the GBR catchment. And I've just got a quick little map, I hope it works on this slide, to show you. There is a link in the guidelines which takes you to a map as well. But if you can see on this map here of Queensland, we've got the lighter green space. That is the catchment area. So traditional owner groups are in the catchments that have water quality projects. And then you've got the fine black line which goes around the World Heritage Area, which is the sea country space. Traditional owners who have access or who are associated in that area too. So in other programs that I've run in the past have traditionally worked with saltwater groups, and they generally cut off, as you can see on that bottom line near the colon, but there is a lot more depth to in that map down into the catchment area. So just having a look at that and what that actually looks like. The Eastern Torres Strait is just a question that's come in. There is the eastern cluster of the Torres Strait traditional owners that have cultural connection to the Great Barrier Reef, full stop. If those groups want to put in a project, they are absolutely able to. The projects need to run in the Great Barrier Reef World Heritage Area. That's one of the stipulations of the Reef Trust Partnership. So if you wanted to do a water quality project that has an effect on the World Heritage Area, those would be assessed, and I'm thinking that they would be eligible. Yeah, hopefully I've answered that one okay. So there may be groups, traditional owner groups, that don't have a way to actually run the project themselves. And when I say that, I mean as an applicant, you need to be a registered entity. So you need to have a business account that a grant can be paid into. And one of the ways that we can deal or can provide sort of an opportunity for groups that aren't quite ready yet to run the project fully by themselves in a contract sense is that we have a sponsoring or an auspicing capacity in this grants round. So if you are working with another traditional owner group who has a registered sort of bank account and is willing to auspice or sponsor you, they can become the applicant, and you can still be the traditional owner group that runs a project and has has ownership over the project itself, but it's actually run back through a sponsorship sort of entity. The other arrangements that we've currently got in place for the GBRF in our first grants round that we ran in 2019 is we've got some NRM groups who are auspicing at the moment. We've got some other Indigenous organisations auspicing for smaller traditional owner groups that didn't have the capacity to actually do the contracting work. And like I said, any other traditional owner groups that have a registered entity. So the application form is designed to capture that information. The key part of that is just that the project still needs to be traditional owner led, and the auspicer, helps out in that space in terms of maybe some of the governance, and certainly they enter into the contract with the GBRF. There's a fuller list. I just want you to refer back to the guidelines, but I just do want to just raise two things about who is not eligible. So individual people can't apply for a grant. It's a Commonwealth funding stipulation. So it needs to come from a high level. So that's why we were asking for that registered entity. It needs to have an ABN or an ACN that can actually enter into grant. Also need to point out that organisations that have, at the time of the application closing date, which is the 17th of November, if you have any overdue final reports or acquittals for other grant programs, that will basically push you out of eligibility too. So the checks that we will do against existing grants through the Great Barrier Foundation, the Looking After Country grant round is the other check that is in particular that I will just check against. There is a long list of what can't be funded. Again, I'll just, I'll throw you back into the grant guidelines. But I think that there's a few obvious places, and it may seem overly obvious, but I just want to point them out. If the assessment panel cannot relate the project back to healthy water activities or some sort of leadership capacity building of traditional owners in the healthy water area, then this is not a good fit for you. So please don't apply. Please don't apply and waste your time, because we can only fund these areas. These are healthy water grants for traditional owners, and we've been very clear in the guidelines about the kind of the scope that is fundable. If you want to subcontract work, and there are consultants, and there are absolutely ways that this can be done through your process, you need to identify them in your application form in part of your budget section that says you're going to be using a facilitator or a grants writer or a trainer or those sorts of things. If work is going to be devolved out of this grant, you just need to specify them and have them as part of your grant. But if you have the intention of taking the funds in and putting them out to other second parties without stipulating that, then that's also not fundable under this grant right. It needs to be new work, so it can be part of an existing project as long as it's an add-on. It can't be, we can't fund activities that have already occurred and you want to sort of cover off on those payments. If it's already gone ahead, that's not eligible. But we are obviously in a space, especially with the larger grants, where you may have an existing program and you want to fund project type activities or part of it out of that. That's okay, as long as it hasn't been done yet and is a future piece. There's obviously major construction work, no acquisition of land or other real estate property, it's meant to be real estate property. The project relates to planned activities outside the reef catchment. So that was the map that I put up. The projects actually need to occur in the reef catchment space or in the World Heritage space. I know this seems counterintuitive. I mean, I know this seems very intuitive, but none of the projects can have an adverse environmental impact. And yeah, there's no duplication of funding. So if you've already been funded through another grant process for exactly the same activities, there are a few checks that we'll do in our due diligence for successful grant applicants, and we won't duplicate funding in that space. There's a full process For the competitive grants round, you can see here, this is listed in the grant guidelines as well. At the time that the application is submitted, which closes on obviously November 17th this year, there is an assessment process. There is a panel that is formed with people who have experience in either grants, water quality. They are traditional owners, so Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people themselves. I try to have a minimum of 2 members of the assessment panel being Indigenous, so that we have the right perspective in the assessment of the applications. That full process runs against the criteria that are specified in the guidelines, and then the group, that assessment panel, makes a recommendation. It goes up for advice to the GBRF board. They sign off on it, and that's when we can have the announcements made in the second week of December. I've called the 11th of December as my work to date, and that's what I'm going to try and stick to. The process after that is, for the unsuccessful applicants, there will be feedback and information that can be passed back, because if there's a way to improve or be more competitive in the future, we're very interested in working with groups to get them into that space. For the grantees, or for the applicants that are successful, we will start the funding agreement space, like I talked about before, in mid-January. Then you need to run your project. There are reporting requirements. You need to do reports, financial and against monitoring of your objectives and outcomes that you said you're going to achieve. And then there'll be an evaluation component overall of the whole program, and you'll be asked to be part of that. So the data and reporting that you provide, if you're successful in that, all feeds into the evaluation process. I just want to point out and just go through very quickly, I'll go to the right page. There are eligibility criteria, and this is the criteria that people, the assessment panel, is marking against. So if you need to understand what sort of questions to ask yourself or what to write in the application form, we've linked the assessment criteria into the questions in the application form, so there you can see which criteria sits against which question. So the first assessment criteria is that the project is traditional owner led. This very much needs to be about traditional owners, what they want to do, how this benefits them, their skills, their country, their water, all of those sorts of things. So we'll be asking for how were traditional owners involved in the planning of the project, how will they be involved in the running of the project, and how will the outcomes affect traditional owners at the end of the project. All of these criteria are weighted equally, by the way, so they're all worth 10 points. There's no weighting on any of them. The need and potential benefits of the project, the project outcomes. This is where you need to link those objectives that specified before into what you're trying to achieve, what your project is about. So the importance of healthy water and how this project relates to keeping or making water healthy as part of a healthy Great Barrier Reef. If you look on page 13 of your guidelines, I've really, we've dropped in quite a lot of little descriptions there about what to include in your summary. I mean, the project objectives, how the activities will work against it. You must, for complex projects, there's a little bit more detail there about how the project will build on or leverage from existing partnerships or relationships. You need to list all the partners and identify how these add value to the project, including sort of like in-kind contributions and those sorts of things. The third part is about your project planning and your budget. So we're looking for, can you step out, can the assessment panel from the application information work out what you're trying to do, what activities you'll achieve or what outcomes you want, and how much each of those spaces will cost. This is a really important part of building up your application. Don't underestimate how important it is. There's a full 10 points there, and often in applications when I'm part of an assessment panel, people roll up the information a bit too much. So if you need a consultant to come on board, or you're going to put a project officer on board, I mean, have a map out of what that will cost you and put it there. If you can get quotes for the different components that you need to purchase, send the quotes in. That's fantastic proof that you've thought about this and that these are real costs, not made up costs that the assessment panel are kind of having a think about whether or not it's reasonable. They can see the quote in front of them. That's just a reality of what that is going to cost you. And that goes an awfully long way in just providing the evidence and easy information for the assessment panel to assign you the marks that you need. There's a capacity of the organisation to deliver the project. So this is a little bit about whether or not you've run projects before, and this will be marked in different ways, obviously according to the funding level that you are coming in at. If you have not run many projects before, if you're trying to set yourself up, you just need to say that if you're applying for a much smaller grant to actually help you do all of that. We fully appreciate that that's a starting out point. And also, this is another place where if you are getting a sponsor, like an auspicing organisation, to give you a hand, leverage their experience and write down how you're getting support in this space, about how they can help you with report writing, or how people are, how you can call meetings together and who's going to be at those meetings, and those sorts of how decisions are going to be made. And then all the way up to the complex, obviously the Keystone grants, we're looking for your experience and your track record in project management and in dealing with this space, or the opportunity that you've really been waiting for to step up into this space because you've run lots of small grants before and you've got the right governance in place to do your decision making and your sign off and all of those sorts of things. Just tell us, just write it out. This is just an important feature. Just remember, the assessment panel doesn't know very much about you, and everything that you provide under these criteria are what they can mark you on. So the last one, we're really looking for a communication piece. It's really important to us at the GBRF that people hear about the amazing work that is going on, and that these projects, the opportunities that projects provide to traditional owners. So, write about what avenues or opportunities you will use to share the projects that you're doing, the outcomes that you're achieving, and how important they are, and those sorts of things. Lots of things that we've got going on at the moment. The people are using social media, they're using Facebook, they're talking at workshops and conferences, they're making meetings with government or partner organisations to actually talk about their project and share what traditional owners are doing on country. All of these things, fact sheets or information sheets that are being handed around. I've got groups that are currently doing radio interviews about the projects that they're doing, and have got some of their story into just their local newspapers. So there's heaps of different methods that you can use, and you can talk about communicating this, but it's about not only communicating well within your traditional owner groups or between your traditional owner groups, but out into the broader community as well. So that just leads us on to the developing an application. There's a few key points. Look at your application form, but the applicant should be the owner of the bank account in which the grant will be paid. So the front part of it says who is the applicant. And yeah, whoever's receiving those funds, that's where you need to put it. If you're a sponsor, if you're auspicing a group, that's your front page there. The second part of the application form is about the traditional owner group. If it's the same, you only need to fill out the front piece once. But I just need to be very clear that we just need to see that line of sight with who the applicant is, so that we can do the funding, like the funding agreements with the actual applicant. Yes, so this is a contractual arrangement. There is a funding agreement that comes as part of this grant. We can walk people through what they look like. There will be a copy placed up on the web with just the front part of the funding agreement, and then the schedule is obviously all about your project. That's the bit that's negotiated in the later part of January next year if you're successful. But that information will be available. The person signing the application form and the funding acceptance forms must be authorised to do so, and that's part of your governance arrangements. We'll just check that it's the director, or it's the CEO, or whoever is set up in that space to do that. That's fine, but that's a due diligence check that we do. And just a call out to people who think they need to start, and hit the ground running potentially in February. The start date for your project should take into account the project preparation time. So if you need time to call a meeting and get some stuff set up, or if the first requirement is a more extensive project plan, we can build that into the front of your project. That's completely acceptable, and it's fine, and it just puts you in a very a very solid and steady place to actually launch into your project into the future. There are timelines around the different funding levels. So that startup grant for up to 25,000 is for a project that can go, no longer than 18 months. That would be expectation. I was thinking potentially 12 months, but I know things can happen and sometimes you need a bit more of a run up. So I've extended it for 18 months, but it can go for as short or as long as you need in that 18-month period. The second level, the 25 to 150,000 is for projects that are about 2 years long. And then the larger grant is can go for no longer than the 30th of May, okay, up to 2024. So at 30th May 2024 is basically a cut-off line for all projects across the Great Barrier Reef Foundation in the RTP space. And so that's just a date we need to be mindful of. The amounts applied for should be exclusive of GST. So put in, if you're applying for a $50,000 project, it's GST exclusive. At the foundation, through the funding arrangements, we will add the GST on if you're registered and you need that. We'll add it on top. It's okay. You don't need to absorb that. And I just said it before, but it's just here. Remember that the foundation assessment panel have little or no knowledge of what you do. So the information that you provide, the letters of support, the letters, the descriptions, those sorts of features of the grant, in that you've got those spaces in the grant application form. I mean, write about yourself, write about who your group are, provide the letters, provide the quotes from the different suppliers that support your project, and just try to give as much information as you can in that space. We do have a space, and you can see in the application form that your letters of support from elders and those sorts of things can take an audio form or a video form. If you need your elders to talk, or if people just want to take the opportunity to talk about the support for the project or how it was developed, you can send in supporting information along that line too. So there's the opportunity that's happened today through this webinar, but we've got an email address that's just dedicated for queries that you can use. So if you need to go to grants if you've got future queries, grants@barrierreef.org. Kathy and I monitor that every day and try to give responses as quickly and as soon as we can. So use that. If the questions have been asked before, we'll put the frequently asked questions section up on the foundation website. Have a scroll through that section as well, and just see if there are things that you're interested in, if they're answered there. Otherwise, you are most welcome to use that address. And so I've just got handed another question here that I can deal with, and I'll just think. We're in the question and answer time anyway, so I can stop the share. And I can go up here and just answer this question. So someone is seeking clarification on the Torres Straits and how to show a project is in the World Heritage Area. So the map that I showed you with the line, the place of where the project is needs to be situated, it needs to be within that boundary. So for example, we know that Rain Island has significant connections to eastern traditional owner groups from Torres Strait Islands in the Eastern Cluster Group. If they're working with Woodity and they want to do a project, in that Rain Island space, then that group, those traditional owner groups, are completely welcome to apply in there. So if there is a project that's based up in the Torres Straits, I think that's where I'm not understanding that would be relevant to the Great Barrier Reef World Heritage Area, because the line does cross off there. But we're not excluding traditional owner groups that exist in the Eastern Cluster. They are completely relevant and completely able to apply if the project, is down in the World Heritage Area. Yep, so that's cool. So Eliza has recorded names, and if anyone needs a particular follow-up because I haven't been able to answer your question adequately and you've got a very specific question that needs to ask, and perhaps I think it might be whoever's asking. Dave, you and I might need to just have a chat about the Torres Straits and just get clarification. If you've got an example, you and I might just be able to work through it, and we can just understand where you're coming from, because I've sort of got like a holus bolus answer, but I think you might have a very particular case study or example that we can just talk through, and that might be a good way to kind of resolve that. I'll put that answer, wherever we land, I'll put that example up on the frequently asked questions for people to actually address. So Eliza has recorded a list of names. Thank you for people who have attended today. And the recording, so we just need to give us 1 or 2 days to, this recording saves down, and then we'll place it up on the web. People can access that through the whole time that the application process is open. We'll keep that live. The only reason I say that it goes down then is because we close that small section of the website down so that people don't get confused and think that the grants are still open. But this recording for the Healthy Water grants, and then again for the RTP grants tomorrow, will be open as well. And they will remain on the website until the 17th of November. I'll do frequently asked questions in batches up onto the website. So from today, I'll leave, probably they'll get up by tomorrow night, and then moving forward in that kind of timing. It's not instantaneous. So I'm sorry if you ask me a question in the morning, you may not see it on the website by the afternoon. I've got to submit it through the IT section. So I just wanted to let you know about timing for that. Yeah, just want to say thank you very much to everybody that showed up today. I hope it was helpful. There is one more thing. There is actually a grant training opportunity workshop that has just been developed by the Great Barrier Foundation with a consultant. It wasn't put out because I didn't have the right paperwork in at the time, but I'm going to put that up on the web as well. So groups who have little experience or who basically breaking into the grants writing area, we're going to be running a couple of workshops. People can apply through an expression of interest, and we've got a trained grants writer who is going to be running those. There'll be one run on the healthy, for the timing for the Healthy Water grants, and there'll be one run on for the timing of the RTP grants as well. So I have quite a number of spots available in those training sessions, but they won't go through like I've gone through. This is more about how do you write a grant, what makes a good grant application. And so I'd be looking for traditional owner groups who are really just starting out and don't have a lot of experience in that, but everyone can apply. It is an expression of interest process. There are limits to the number of people that I can actually put through the training program, and they are not next week but the following week. So I'll put those dates up and that opportunity and paperwork up on the web in the next 1 or 2 days. So I just wanted to let you know about that as well. All right, I'll just do a last quick check. Yep. So thanks again, everybody. And if people, need to see me tomorrow, then I'll see you then as well. Thank you.